development sessions for IBANs. My name is April Howe, and I will be your facilitator for the next hour. Hopefully many of you have been on the call last week. We did the first part of dealing with the difficult customer, and so today we're going to do part 2. So welcome everybody. I see there's still a few folks logging in, so I'll just wait 1 second till we give everybody a moment to get settled.
Hey April, it's Noreen from Wedgwood. How are you?
Hey Noreen, how are you?
Not too bad. If you could just give me a couple minutes. I just got this actually set up here on a computer. We had to move the meeting this morning from our boardroom and reschedule it into an office. So
okay.
If you could just give me a couple minutes to get everybody in here.
Go right ahead, Noreen.
Greatly appreciated.
Okay, so go right ahead.
I'm just going to put you on hold on my side.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, so we've got some lovely waiting music to enjoy while we wait for Noreen and her team folks.
The right people and the right job is one way to ensure the success of your business. Talk to our risk consultants about ways we can help make this a reality for your business.
We're having trouble.
Just how much should you insure your home or business? Is there a difference between the amount you paid to purchase it and the cost to replace it in the event of a loss? We've got the tools to help you determine the correct limit, and we are waiting to talk to you about it.
Okay, April, I've got 3 here, 2 more coming, so just give me another 2 minutes if possible.
No problem. Listen, Noreen, don't bother putting us on hold. We're getting your internal commercial there, so we'll just wait a second.
Perfect.
Thanking everybody for their patience while we get set up this morning. Much appreciated.
Oh, no problem. No worries.
Thanks, guys. Anybody have a difficult customer since we had our last chat?
No?
Oh, nice. Lucky you.
Yes. Pretty lucky, knock on wood.
Of course, it's only been a week, so.
Maybe you send off some great vibes, then we won't have any.
You know, I'm going to do my best on that. I'm going to do my best.
Hey, April, all of Wedgwood's here. Have a great meeting.
Hi, Wedgwood. Thanks for coming.
Hi.
Hi, guys. Thanks, everybody, for joining us this morning. This one was a little bit earlier than we typically have our sessions, but we were snowed in last week, as many of you know, and as many of you experienced yourselves. So really appreciate everybody's flexibility and making it in today. So again, my name is April Howe, and I'm a partner here at Knightsbridge Robertson Surrett, and I've been really enjoying the collaboration and the partnership with IBANs to share a lot of professional development information on issues that matter to you guys as an industry. So it's been really great, and really appreciate the feedback that we've been getting. So as we look into the future, if you have topics that are of particular concern for you that you'd like some PD on or some discussion around, let IBANs know so that we can make sure that we're tailoring these sessions for you. We want to make sure that we're hitting, somebody put us on hold and we're getting your commercial. So we're going to ask whoever's got us on hold to let someone know to get us off hold.
Discuss your liability limits with McLeod Lorway.
Well, McLeod Lorway, you've got us on your commercial, your internal commercial. So if there's anybody on the call, there we go. Thank you. Those are great when you've got a customer on hold. Not so great on a conference call. So as I was saying, folks, we just want to make sure that we're hitting topics that matter to you. So your feedback's really, really important. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, so good, bad, and ugly feedback is all welcome. Much appreciated. All right, so let's jump in. Let's talk about, or continue to talk about, difficult customers. It's funny, I had a discussion last week with somebody not in the insurance industry, and this person, we were talking about a work situation they were having with a client, and he said, well, you know, the customer's always right. And I said, you know what? I don't think so. That's not necessarily true. You have to think about how you treat your customer, but that doesn't always mean that your customer is right. And so today I want to talk about some of the actual strategies that you use, that you can use in dealing with difficult customers. And I've had a few in my lifetime, and I'm sure many of you have dealt with this, almost all of you, I'm sure, at one point in your career have dealt with the difficult customer. And so I'd ask you to sort of think back to how you dealt with it at the time, and hopefully there will be some components of today's session that will have you maybe rethink of a way to deal with difficult customers, or maybe, you know, consider what you would have done differently in the situation you found yourself in the past. Okay. So I want to make it clear that the strategies that I'm going to talk about actually are pretty simple. A few of them have a little personal strain on you that you'll have to engage, but the strategies themselves aren't that difficult. It's just a matter of employing them and knowing when and how to employ them. So that's really what I want to touch on. So, you know, how many times have you heard that, you know, how important listening is in any sort of business communication, personal communication for that matter, and how important that is? And so what does listening actually mean? And so when I ask people that question, and I'd love for anybody to jump in, but when you think about what listening actually means, what's happening when you're listening? Or what's not happening when you're listening? Anybody have a thought on that? Everybody went quiet on me again. You're doing good there in the beginning, guys. So when you're listening, obviously, you're not talking. And when you're listening, you're also not thinking about what you want to say next. You're actually engaged in the other person. I'm a certified coach, and so one of the things that I do and have to do in my job, there's sort of 3 levels of listening that I try to engage. So the first level is what a person's saying. So just the words. And that's kind of literal, right? The second level of listening is listening for what you think, what they think. So they think I'm incompetent, they think we're being unfair, they think. So thinking about what they think. And then the third and the most challenging level to sort of get at is what a person might believe. So the difference between what someone thinks and what they believe is that think is usually on an emotional level, and what a person believes is that deeper inner core around values. So what are the values that you're hearing in what a person is saying to you? So what they're saying, what they're thinking, and what they believe. And those are the 3 levels. And if you're really good and a really solid listener and you've been doing this for a while, you can almost tap into that. So once you get down to that 3rd level around core beliefs, that's when you know, A, that your listening has gone really deep. And you'll likely be able to find a place that connects with that person in your conversation. So if you're dealing with someone and they say to you, look, we both know that this is bull. We both know that you guys are just trying to make more money. And I'm sure you've heard something like that. You know, for many of you, that would be front lines with customers. So what they're saying, obviously, is clear. What they're thinking is, or the emotion around it, is anger, a sense of being treated unfairly. And so the value that's there is fairness, right? That's the core value that they feel is being stomped on. So when you get down to that level, that's what you want to attack. That's what you want to address is, you know, my sense and what I think I might be hearing from you is that you feel that this is not fair. Let me explain to you why this is the way it is. Let me help you understand that. So when you can tap into someone's core belief or what you think is their core belief, and you know, the challenge in all of this is it's not a perfect science, but when you can tap into what you believe is their core belief, and if they feel that belief is being stomped on, you can address that. And that's a really effective way to begin to neutralize someone that is challenging you or is upset or angry. So that's something that takes a little bit of time and takes a little bit of practice, if you will. But it's a really great way to tap into what's going to matter to someone when you're dealing with them. P.S. That works at home as well. Works with a lot of people. Okay. So the next thing is you need to be sure that you stay calm. Easier said than done when you're dealing with someone that might be, you know, worst case, maybe even calling you names, but is really upset with you and is taking their frustration out on you. Staying calm is really, really critically important. And the thing that I always tell myself is, you know, you're not talking about me, you're talking to me. You're not upset with me. I'm the one dealing with you at the moment, but it's not me. So you need to try to find that separation, and in order to do that, or you know, you have to do that in order to be able to stay calm. If you're taking it personally, it's kind of tough to stay calm. So I get that it's really easy to get caught up in the moment, and particularly if someone is being particularly rude. We had a client here, now if you could imagine, I deal with people that have lost their jobs, and so I had one particular client 2 weeks ago. He was really angry at the world about losing his job, and so I get the headspace. That doesn't mean that it's okay for him to take that out on my team. And so in a workshop, he was very verbal. He was really challenging the person that was facilitating the workshop. When he left the workshop, we'd run out of parking validation stickers. He was really upset about that. And he began to swear at the receptionist who wasn't able to give him one. And so he was just really, really challenging. And so I was called into the situation, asked him to step into my office, explain to me what was going on. And he was telling me about all the things that are going wrong in the service that he's receiving from us. And I get it. He was upset about, you know, having to pay for parking, for instance. So in a calm voice, I said, you know what, I get your frustration. I know that we offered you a double validation the next time that you're in, so it will pay for more of your parking. But if that doesn't help you today, what would you like to see happen? And so he said, well, give me the money. And I said, well, you know, I can't give you the money, but if you can give me a few minutes, I can go down to the office. And so, you know, I went down to the office. I got a special validation sticker for him. Now, did I need to do that? Probably not. Did it shift the way that not only that he saw his service with us, which it did, but he also saw someone going a step further in order to address him. So for him, that was a better outcome than he could have asked for. So he's changed his entire way of being when he comes into our office. And I thought, that was a really great outcome and a pretty easy fix for us. So sometimes you don't always have those easy fixes available to you, particularly in a very technical, highly regulated industry like the one that you all work in. But where you can get the quick and easy wins, try to do that. Try to do that. So staying calm, literally monitor your breathing. So when you feel that you're getting caught up in the emotion of a situation, take a note on physically how you're reacting. Just 1 second. If you know that you're engaging or over-engaging, take a breath. You can even put a client on hold if they're on the phone. Or let me just get right back with you 1 moment. I want to check on something. Step out of the room and take a breath. It's quite okay, and it's a better thing to do than try to push through it and either say something you don't want to say or escalate the situation in any way. So that's tip number 2. 3, don't judge. You don't know where a person has been, and I come across this a lot if you're dealing with the phone company or your internet provider, sometimes, or your bank for that matter. You can get bounced around to several different people, and what drives me crazy is you having to repeat your story from the beginning all over again. And the more often you have to do that, likely the more frustrated you become as a customer. So, but that person, sometimes when that person comes to you as that frustrated customer, they may not realize that you've already told that story 3 times. So they're coming to you with a frustration that sometimes you're not aware of. And that's just one example. Maybe you're dealing directly with a client that has had a rough time with other brokers before coming to your company, for instance. They have a bad taste in their mouth from a prior experience. And so really try to suspend judgment and deal with getting to that core issue. And I take you back again to those 3 levels of listening and dealing with what you can hopefully pinpoint as their core issue. And what's that core value that is they feel is not being addressed. So understanding that and understanding there are, as Dr. Phil always says, 2 sides to a pancake. You've got yours and they've got theirs. And that listening is going to be your best tool. So really stopping and not trying to defend your position, but just hearing what that other person is going through, even if it's just for the sake of letting them vent. Sometimes that's enough. So if someone is acting unreasonable, what they're thinking or what the emotion around that is can be fear, vulnerability, possible sense of loss. So when someone is acting unreasonable, it's fueled by a core emotion. So just try to listen below the top layer, and oftentimes that will help you through those scenarios. Okay. Reflect, respect, and dignity. So really we're talking about professionalism. And I remember being in Sears in Penhorn Mall, and there was a really young, very young lady. She must have been about, I don't know, maybe 19, in the shoe department. And I was looking at a pair of slippers, and I'd asked her if she could get me the slipper from the storeroom. And I remember her saying to me, "Yeah, just a sec," which kind of struck me. I wasn't thrilled with it, but okay. And so I waited and I waited and I waited. And I went up to her and I said, "Just want to make sure you didn't forget about me, just to get you to check on the slipper." And she said, "I said just a sec." So I thought, okay. Now, I'll admit, I'm getting a little wrapped up in this because I'm not understanding why she's being so short with me, and she's the one that's supposed to be providing me with customer service. So the third time, so now, I don't know, 15 minutes has gone by, I asked her, I said, look, if you're too busy, I can get somebody else, just direct me. And so she sighed and sort of threw her eyes up into the air. And so I asked her, I said, look, are you having a tough day? Am I bothering you? So the contempt that she showed me did not give me the space to let her off the hook. So I said, look, is your manager in? And I just shared with the manager what my experience was. Now, how could she have handled me differently? Even if she's having a bad day, you still have to put that aside. You're still in a position where you need to separate what's going on in your life from the service that you're giving a customer. And that's not always easy because life doesn't put itself on hold just because you're having a bad day. So that's reality. But in the end of the day, they are the client, and you do owe them your respect. Doesn't mean they're right, but you do owe them your respect for as long as they're, being respectful to you, and even when they're not, you need to find a respectful way to deal with that. So matching their contempt or matching their disrespect is clearly not the way to go, and it's just not professional. Not that any of you would do that, I'm sure. Number 5, seek help. So looking for others around you, I think sometimes we feel an obligation to fix it ourselves, and that we should know enough to not have to pull somebody in. Sometimes it's a matter of looking for help to ask somebody to go check into a file while you're talking to the customer. So don't be afraid to call in the troops if you need to deal with a customer and you only have 2 hands and 1 mouth. Asking someone to do something for you is a really great way to expedite the situation. So, most of us work with helpful colleagues. Give them the opportunity to help you out when you're dealing with a particularly challenging customer. That's a great way to, as I said, expedite things and just be efficient with them as well. Okay. So the line that drives me crazy when I'm dealing with an organization, or if I'm the customer and they say, well, that's the rule, or that's the policy. That's, to me, and a lot of you may disagree, but that's a cop-out. That is a cop-out of a way to explain to a customer. So obviously we have policies in place. Telling them that is the policy typically doesn't help. Explain why the policy exists. Explain why the policy is in place. So giving them the law without the explanation is typically not helpful. And if you say, that's the way it is, and in essence you're telling them, well, you just need to accept it. And so you don't want to demand that they have to accept it, and sometimes they do, honestly. But what you want to do is explain why the policy is in place. So we have this policy in place because, there are rules, there are regulations, and if it's law, then explain that. So just give people context as to why something is there so that they understand. And oftentimes your hands are tied. So they need to understand the full context of that. So making sure that a customer is clear on what the rules and regulations and policies are and why that is the case, which, yes, takes a little bit more time, but you're really elevating your customer service to that person even if they don't agree with the policy. So you might want to think about, ensuring that you have really great context around the policies that you deal with on a regular basis so that you can share that with customers. I mentioned earlier about allowing people to vent. It's not as though you're to be a punching bag, but sometimes just letting someone get something off their chest can de-escalate a situation on its own. Just letting them talk it out and listening. that in itself, again, I come back to that listening point. That's such an important tool in your toolbox for dealing with customers that are upset or being challenging for whatever reason. That should be your go-to. Okay. 7, don't patronize. And we're smart. We know when we're being patronized. Telling someone that you understand not only typically doesn't help, it's kind of irrelevant in a sense. So I get empathy, and empathy does matter in these scenarios, but I understand without any real problem-solving skills around it, wrapped around it, doesn't have a lot of weight. So thinking through, how you use your language, and don't use those phrases, I've been there and I get it, which I've been saying this whole time, but having someone understand or telling them that you understand without them having any means for resolution, or at least an understanding as to why something can't be resolved the way that they want it to, I'd much rather you spend your time explaining those things to them than trying to pacify with terminology like, I understand and I get it. Instead of I understand, you might even, acknowledge their feelings by saying, I hear that you're frustrated. I want to try to do something about that. Asking them to engage. So tell me more about your conversation with so-and-so. Tell me more about that situation so I can get a better understanding and be in a position to help you. So engaging them with language like that often will pull them out and have them feel like you're there to support them and you're there to help them. Avoid smiling. Some of us will smile nervously. Some of us will smile because maybe that's your nature. It can be problematic if you're face-to-face with someone and they see you're smiling, and maybe you're trying to be kind and friendly, but they may interpret that as you not taking them seriously or you're mocking them or something like that. So you have to be careful with the smile. You also have to be careful with using any kind of humor in a situation like that. Try your best to read the person. It may not be the time for, a funny little joke or a funny, humorous comment. Think about that before you throw it out there. That can backfire, and so maybe it's just safer to stay in the zone, and as my mother says, stay in your lane. If you're dealing with the situation, deal with that first, and if they initiate something that's funny or humorous, then go in. But typically, you probably just want to stay away from that for the most part. Nine, don't act defensively. You don't want to defend yourself or your organization, and we all know what defensiveness sounds like. Oftentimes when we hear someone that is being defensive, we don't necessarily feel that they're working in our best interest, and that's what people want to feel. Customers want to feel that you're there to work in their best interest. Now, obviously, you're there to work in the best interest of the organization and service your client or customer. And so you have to walk that line. In that conversation with them, they want to understand, how can you help me? So being defensive puts you in an adversarial situation with the client, and that's probably not the best way to, A, get the information that you want, that'll lead you to a resolution that will be helpful for both parties. So not acting defensive, and if there's a mistake been made, own that. You may have to own that on behalf of a colleague. Maybe you didn't make the error, but a colleague that dealt with this person before did. Own that. My apologies that you didn't get the correct information. This is not the way that we like to work, and this is not our standard. My apologies for that. We're going to make this right for you. You're not perfect, and mistakes will be made, and the best way to deal with that is just to own it. So that defensiveness often comes from a place where we feel that we personally are being attacked, or the organization that we work for is being attacked, or a colleague is being attacked. But remember, those 3 levels of listening, there they are again. If you're truly listening for what's going on with that individual and what it is that core value, address that and don't take it personally. Even if they're attacking you personally, you're just the one that's in front of them at the moment. It's not really about you. That doesn't mean that you need to be a doormat for a customer that is being irrational. But to a point, just check yourself to make sure that you're not being overly defensive in dealing with them. Don't return anger with anger. You see the Hulk as being a Batman there. I spend a lot of time finding these animated images, so I hope you're enjoying them. So look, it's so easy to find ourselves in a situation that we're, again, as I said earlier, returning the anger or matching the contempt. We don't want to go there. You want to make sure that you are absolutely of the highest level of professionalism throughout this entire exchange. Oftentimes, and I'm sure in most of your organizations, these interactions are recorded, and that's for good reason. I mean, there's professional development opportunity, there's training opportunity in doing that. And so make sure that you're thinking about, how am I sounding, how am I appearing? I know in some of the training that we do a lot of role playing. I make a really great disgruntled customer. If anybody ever needs me to come in and be a disgruntled customer for training purposes, I do it quite well. But it's good to map that out. It's good to get some thoughts, and as I said in our last session, to have some policy around how you deal with customers and where's that line where you can hang up the phone or ask the client to call back. I mean, what is that line? What does that policy look like? But in the moment, really think about how you're engaging from a physical, from a verbal perspective, and from in terms of what you're saying. So it's really tough when you're a little amped up to keep your voice low and calm and monotone, but it's a really, really great strategy in dealing with those clients. In the work that we do here at my firm, talking to somebody and keeping my tone low and even and calming, no matter how upset that person is getting, is one of the best tools that I have. When someone's upset, let them finish their sentences. We often want to jump in because, well, again, we're amped up, or we think we have the answer, and so, or they're saying something and it's not correct, and we'll jump in and talk over them. Never helpful. That usually just increases anxiety and elevates the level of the conversation. Even if they're wrong, let them finish their sentence and then respond.
What happens if it's vice versa, if they're not letting you finish your sentences?
That's a great point. So when you can find a pause, ask them if, I'd really like to share this information with you. Can I have the floor for a second? I'd just like to explain the reason for the policy or for what it is. And again, that's a great question, because sometimes you have to decide, either as an individual or as an organization, where's the line in dealing with difficult customers. So for instance, we have a policy here that if somebody swears at us, that's it. You can hang up the phone. We are not obliged to deal with that in any way. So that's a policy. So do you have a policy for difficult customers? And if not, is that something you should have with some discussion amongst the group of folks that are client-facing? What does that look and feel like for you? So if someone's just going on and angry and on, you have to decide how effective are you able to be in that conversation. Sometimes it's let me get you some information. I'm going to put you on hold for a second, and the hold is just to get them to calm down. Sometimes that works. So you have to decide how far do you want to go in this conversation with this customer. Can you be effective? Do you have answers in the moment? Or is it just best to let them go and then come back to them with answers? Well, that's a great question. So in the same vein, not arguing with somebody. So, your job is to relay the information and try to find a solution for your customer. Arguing back with them is the same as, you don't want to show contempt. All the things that we've really been talking about here. None of that's going to be helpful. And the more I talk about it, I'm coming up with lots of examples where I've had to deal with this, and it's not easy to stay in your lane, as my mother would say. It's not easy to not get emotionally engaged. But, your job is to keep that at a professional level. If they go offside with that, then you have to decide what are your options in dealing with that person. As long as your behavior is in line with what the organization expects, that's what you want to ensure. If the customer or client's not on side with that, well then hopefully you'll have had some discussions in your organization about what is acceptable and non-acceptable customer behavior. So I mentioned this a little bit earlier about taking ownership if there's a mistake. But even saying, I'm really sorry that this has been your experience. That's not necessarily taking all of the blame for a situation, or if they misunderstand something. I'm sorry is the great neutralizer and can really de-escalate a situation. I'm not suggesting you take ownership of anything that is not your error, not your mistake, or not the organization's mistake. But addressing that, I'm sorry there's been a miscommunication, I'm sorry. Don't be patronizing and say, I'm sorry you misunderstood. That's not what I'm talking about. But I often will say, I'm sorry this has been your experience, which is no indication of blame. But I really am sorry that this is how, there's been an interaction with our organization that was not pleasant for you, regardless of fault. So I'm sorry can go a long way, and some people are easier, find it easier to utilize that than others, but it works. It often works. So this is what I was just speaking about around setting your limits and boundaries. You have every right to be assertive. So if it's a matter of saying, sir, your tone is getting very escalated, so be very almost literal with how you're addressing someone. Sir, I don't appreciate the language that you're using. I'm going to hang up the phone now, and I will have a colleague return your call. That's fine. But you have to know where that line is first. Letting someone know that you don't appreciate their, you don't need, please don't yell at me. Please don't speak to me that way. You have to draw a line where you feel that you're comfortable having the conversation. If someone goes over that line, give them warning. or find a way to exit that conversation. So maybe you don't talk about your personal boundaries or limits. Maybe you just say, sir, I want to get you the best information that I can. I would like to call you back in 15 minutes after I've had the opportunity to go through your file more thoroughly. That might be your out. But please know that, and I would think that your organization would support you not having to deal with irate customers and take any level of berating. But it's great as teams and as organizations for you to have the conversation around what is acceptable and what strategies as an organization do we want to adopt in order to deal with clients or customers that are acting that way. If it only happens a few times a year, great, but at least there is a mechanism in place that employees understand how to utilize when it does happen. It's a simple thing, but it's a really great tool. This is one of my favorites. Trust your instinct. You know, gut tends to play a big role in our decision making, and sometimes we can't define what gut is, but it's that knowing that we have in terms of how to deal with something, or that you feel like, okay, it's not escalated right now, but I can see where this is going to go. Better for you to exit that conversation having trusted your instincts than to try to play it out and work against your instincts. Instincts are often more right than wrong, and if it's a matter of playing it safe, that's probably a better way to go in most situations. So trusting your instincts is an important one, and if your instincts rarely are wrong for you, then there's no need to ignore them in this situation. One response does not fit all. So that's a very, very true statement. So while it's great to have a policy in place, you want to utilize that with some flexibility around the individual and what your interaction overall has been with them. So if it were, a more mature elderly woman and she mistakenly swore, I probably wouldn't hang up on her. But if it were somebody else, maybe that was younger, and they were angry and they were getting upset and they swore, then I might hang up the phone. So it's using your judgment, and again, calling back to that instinct, to assess every situation and to assess yourself how you're responding to the situation. So you just don't assess the individual, assess yourself and where you are with it, because from one day to the next you may not always be in the same space in terms of your ability to deal with that. So take all of that in consideration and then make a decision. Debriefing is really important. So oftentimes when we've had a difficult customer, most of our client interactions are documented in one way or another, whether it's a recorded phone call or notes or the like, updates in the CRM. However that's captured, in addition to that, have a conversation with your supervisor or manager, have a conversation with a colleague, just around what happened and how you dealt with it. A, it's great to get it off your chest. And B, there might be opportunity for someone to say, I've had that situation in the past and here's how I dealt with it. So there might be a learning opportunity there for you as well. So doing the debrief is always good. Discharge your own stress around these situations. So what I find interesting is when we're being, when someone's coming at us and they're upset or being challenging, because we're asking you to be professional, you end up suspending what might be your natural reaction to that. So you sort of have to hold that in a space and compartmentalize it while you're being professional, while you're being, and for some of you, you have absolutely no connection to the emotions of the situation, so there's maybe not even a need to discharge your stress. But for a lot of people, suspending a natural reaction, it's going to live until after you're off the phone, and then how do you discharge that? Sometimes it's just, breathe in, breathe out, which is great. For some people, they're going to have to go for a walk, they're going to have to talk to a colleague, they're going to have to do something to sort of, wash that off of them, and then come back to work and continue on. So acknowledge that you are human, and that times customers will get department. The last and one of the more important steps in this entire process. Okay, so 17 steps. That's a lot of them. And some of them I'm sure you already do. Some of them you might do a bit differently, and maybe some you've not been doing. So think about what do you need to be thinking about in your own organization to ensure that you all have the capacity to effectively deal with a challenging or difficult customer. It's been an interesting conversation. We've got about 10 minutes left, and I'm just wondering, are there any specific questions or maybe situations that you want to share that you've had to deal with in the past that anybody can talk about? Okay. Well, if there are no questions, that is it for today. We're getting out of class a little bit early, which is fine. So thank you so much for your undivided attention. We'll be coming up with our, sorry? Oh, I thought I heard somebody jump in there. We'll be coming up with our next session. I think it's sales strategies. I'm not 100% sure, but that will be in the next couple of weeks. But IBANS will certainly put that out to you so you'll know the topic and the date. And until then, I hope everybody has a great Tuesday. All the best. All the best. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.